Good morning, everybody. I know that this is pretty impromptu, and I know that I don't got Matt here. I'm gonna send him a link to see if he wants to come on. But I know that it's pretty early, and some stuff has happened, and I figured I would go live to talk about it. Um, but so yeah, I know that I haven't been around lately. I started a new job recently. There's going to be an update on the SPQR campaign here by the end of the day, kind of giving people some much needed uh, updates on how things are going and what's been going on. Um, but I know that there's no one really here in the chat, so I'm just going to quickly. I'm just going to really quickly get the link out there to a whole bunch of people. I've posted up about what today's stream is going to be out on a few different places. So what we're going to do is real quick is I am going to go and all right. Give me a second. This is all very last minute, so I apologize. Give me a moment. I just want to see if I can't get some people in on here to talk about this because this will be fun. But so we're going to be looking at a trailer that came out here, I guess, in the last day or so. Oh shit! What was that? That was loud. Okay. All right, so I've invited a good friend to come hang out. There's like no one here in the chat. I'm just kind of doing this impromptu, as I said. So they released a trailer for Cleopatra, and I am sure that those of you who know me know that. Let's see. Do we have? Let's see. Sorry, I'm just getting stuff organized. This is going to be really, really funny to see how people react to this in the replay because it's just kind of a mess. I wasn't planning on doing a stream today, but this shit done pissed me off. And we're going to have fun. All right, let me pull up this stupid freaking trailer. Okay. So this was released 2 days ago. I had only seen the billboard of it. All right. So it looks like I'm going solo on this one, which is fine. I should be able to make that work. But anyways, so what we are going to be doing is we're going to be watching this Queen Cleopatra trailer. Let's see, we've got somebody hanging out with us here. There's somebody watching. That's nice. That's good to know. But anyways, so anyone who knows me knows that I'm a huge Roman history nut. As the title of my streams kind of give away, I generally do a Roman history stream on Wednesdays, but the past few Wednesdays have not really worked. First, my co-host Matt had some stuff come up at work, and so he wasn't able to make one. And then the following week, I had some personal stuff going on. And then this past week, I was doing a work event in El Paso, so I obviously could not come hang out and do what I needed to do on here. And so that's why I haven't been around lately. I apologize. But we my one of my people that I sent a link out to was like, if you want to have a stream at a civilized hour, like, nah, we're going now, because this is ridiculous. So, a huge Roman history guy, and one of the big topics has apparently become a controversy in modern day because, of course, we have to go back and try and rewrite stuff to make people's feelings feel good, is the ethnicity of Cleopatra VII. So, and that's effectively what this documentary is about. So we're going to go and we're going to play this trailer, and I'm going to do my very best not to pause it every few seconds, and then we'll replay it again, and then I will go through and tear it apart. So
there was a time long ago when women ruled with
all right, screw that. We're going to pause. Calling this a documentary is a goddamn disgrace, for one. And I will pull up the little graphic that I posted on Twitter here in a little bit once we get through the trailer. But not even remotely accurate. Not even remotely accurate what we're going for right now. What we're of course trying to push is, Cleopatra was not actually white. She was black, and this has all just been a revisionist mock-up to try and undercut this powerful black woman. And that's not the case. And on top of that, of all the queens in history, all the rulers and all the monarchs that you want to emulate, Cleopatra is like the bottom of the curb, in my opinion. But I mean, hey, whatever. We will get there. And so, of course, we have this thing on the screen where I don't think that they've said it yet, but this is what's about to be said. When woman ruled with unparalleled power. No, they fucking didn't. Cleopatra's reign does not start off as hers. And it just goes to show, it's like you're calling this a documentary and you haven't done the base level research. She was married to her brother, who was the pharaoh. They didn't get along, and a civil war broke out. And Cleopatra was actually ousted from the capital in Alexandria and was on the run by the time Julius Caesar gets there. So, whatever. I guess we just don't care about facts. Even though this is supposed to be a documentary. It's supposed to document historical findings. Let's keep going.
Paralleled power as warriors, queens.
Not even fucking remotely the case. I would love, I'm almost tempted to watch this shit show just so I can see what genius told them that Cleopatra ever actually fought in a battle and was trained in combat, like in the combat of arts. Like, no, if she was a warrior, she wouldn't have tied herself to Caesar or Antony. She wouldn't have tried to tie herself to Octavian. All right.
Mothers of nations. And there is none among them more
So this is produced by Jada Pinkett Smith. All of a sudden, this makes so much sense. Man, does that woman need to just stop. Okay.
iconic than Cleopatra.
I would die for Egypt.
Nefertiti, Hatshepsut, just to name two actual Egyptian pharaoh that actually did something that preserved their people and didn't put them down the path to ruin. Just spitballing.
What would you die for? I am Isis. I am a god.
As long as...
Unironically, that is the most accurate line from this trailer, is that Cleopatra did actually believe herself to be the reincarnation of Isis. What's very unique about Cleopatra is that she comes from the Ptolemaic line of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which is established by Ptolemy I, who is one of the generals of Alexander the Great, which they will briefly mention in this. But what they don't talk about is the fact that the Ptolemies establish their dynasty reigns for around 300 years and brings economic prosperity to Egypt and makes it kind of a center stage region of the Mediterranean antiquity. And they're all inbred. I'll bring this up at the end of the video, but pretty much everyone was boning the sister. Cleopatra is the seventh of her name. The first one is Cleopatra the First of Syra, and she is from the Seleucid Empire, which many people will be like, oh, well, then there's some Middle Eastern, but not really, because the Seleucids were not while they had taken over the Persian portion of Alexander's empire, they were still commanded by Seleucus, who was a Macedonian and is from the Alexander's Diadochi. He was one of his prominent war commanders. And I mean, guy was really cool and everything, but still Greek, still Mediterranean, still ethnically, if you want to go there, white. But yeah, let's keep going with this shit show.
She's alive. She is the pharaoh.
My father's will names me co-ruler of Egypt.
Julius Caesar is aware.
Wait 1 second, but I thought that this was an era where women held unparalleled power to rule. But she was named co-ruler of Egypt. That's interesting. Yeah, no, this is okay, let's keep going.
That Cleopatra is one of the best educated women in the Mediterranean.
He wants to be...
That is true. Cleopatra is considered to be, for her time, one of the most educated women of the known world. She had the advantages, obviously, of being at a leading position at one of the most important royal families at the time that could tie its lineage all the way back to Alexander, which is no small thing. Alexander the Great is big in today's standards, but in classical antiquity, Alexander, by this point in time, might as well have been a god. He was revered and respected by pretty much every person of import. And people would go and visit the grave of Alexander the Great in Alexandria. Important people, even Roman emperors, well past the death of Cleopatra. So like she does have those advantages. But this is what I think is really funny is
king to Cleopatra's queen.
There is no
which is why, he never married her or anything. Like at the end of the day, this whole thing is trying to push a very specific narrative. It's not particularly subtle about it. Julius Caesar did not need Cleopatra. It was the other way around. As I said, by the time Caesar gets to Cleopatra, there is political strife in Egypt. The queen, Cleopatra, who is the older of the two siblings, has been ousted by her brother, and she is in exile. She actually has to be snuck back into Egypt, into Alexandria, to meet Caesar. The story goes is that she hides in like a bundle of rugs. She like gets rolled up into a rug. Rug merchant comes in, presents the rugs, and as they unfurl them, Cleopatra comes out, and it's this whole thing. Now, Caesar ends up backing Cleopatra in this faction, but there's a whole war that ends up getting fought. Now, a lot of people will kind of brush over this, but it's really important to note because this wasn't an easy fight. The Battle of Alexandria was incredibly grueling, and Cleopatra does come out as a victor, but it's only because she has Caesar. Julius understands the importance of having Egypt in Rome's debt, and there's no doubt about that. At this point in time, Egypt is effectively the breadbasket of the Mediterranean. It produces a crazy amount of grain through the Nile River Delta. And on top of that, with the Ptolemies' ties to Alexander the Great and Egypt's own classical history, which was ancient even by then, those standards, like people don't realize that Cleopatra is closer to modern day than she is the building of the pyramids. It is a old, respected nation that has economic importance. So yeah, of course, Caesar wants to tap into that. But Caesar doesn't need Cleopatra. Caesar could have easily chosen to go with her brother and completely tear her down, and it would have been a bloodbath. Cleopatra wouldn't have survived it. But he chooses Cleopatra. Yes, this does give them the ability to make an heir, but he's not going to divorce his wife. He's not going to become queen of. He's not going to be the king of Egypt to her queen, because that's political suicide back in Rome. And in fact, this is going to be something that happens with Mark Antony down the line, is because Mark Antony is going to make this mistake, is going to marry Cleopatra, is going to have a will with Cleopatra that grants her all of these things, and seems to showcase Antony abandoning Roman customs and for forsaking Rome for Egypt. And this is going to be a political tool that Augustus, or Octavian rather, will use against him in gaining the popular support, because Antony was a popular general. He was the right hand of Caesar from a military standpoint. So this whole thing of, oh, well, Caesar just wanted her because of his, like, I mean, I guess there's a degree of truth to it. But in reality, that's not the case. Let's take a look and see if there's anyone joining us here. Dean from Comics Mate has joined, if only briefly, to just say Netflix told me Cleopatra is black. Yeah, thanks. That's what we're here to talk about. She is not. So let's get back to this shit show.
Future without the past.
She was using these relationships with Mark Antony to protect herself and her country.
There is no
Yes and no. I think that you would be foolish to argue that Cleopatra didn't love Antony. I think that if she loved anybody, it was probably Antony. They were very kindred spirits. Cleopatra was known for Cleopatra was known for her, boisterous parties and persona and everything like that. She was a socialite. She had frequent orgies and all this other stuff. Very big party girl, especially in her youth. And Antony was much the same. He had a reputation of kind of screwing everything that moved. So they were very kindred spirits. I don't think that you could set up any sort of narrative that says, oh, well, she was just using them. I think that the most plausible evidence comes from the fact that she tricks Antony into committing suicide, making him think that she had, and then she tries to manipulate Octavian, and when she realizes that Octavian isn't going to fall for that, then she kills herself. I would say that was an act of preservation of state, but I think that the fact that she didn't, she does kill herself, and in her will, she's supposed to be buried with Antony and everything like that, and Octavian even respects that portion despite the very bitter rivalry between them. I would say that lends itself pretty well. I mean, these people, Antony and Cleopatra, I think had like 3-4 kids together. I don't marriages of state and everything, but you only really need to have like 1 or 2. They have a lot. They have a lot of kids together. I don't think that that's just, hey, I'm just doing this for the state. But I mean, hey, whatever.
Rome without Egypt.
Cleopatra was trying to save the country that she loved from destruction.
I don't think that that's the case at all. I think that you could maybe argue that with her going with Caesar, but by the time of the war between Antony and Octavian, Egypt was in a prosperous position. Nobody had any negative eyes toward it. She, if anything, fueled the rivalry between Antony and Octavian that caused this rift, and Antony made Egypt the center of his Eastern Empire. And it got brought down. Battle of Actium. But
I did what I had to do to protect what is mine.
This is a woman exercising power.
Cleopatra was a Ptolemaic ruler, the very first Ptolemy.
okay, so yes, she is the last pharaoh of Egypt. But to be fair, the last Egyptian pharaoh of Egypt was before Alexander the Great by like 50 years. Nectanebo. I think it was Nectanebo the second or third. But like, and he had been staving off the Persians. The Persians had initially acquired Egypt under Cambyses II, who was, I believe, the son or grandson of Korash the First, or Korash the Second, otherwise known as Cyrus the Great. But point is that there hadn't been an Egyptian pharaoh since, Persia, really. They had, they were brought in by Cambyses, and then they shrugged off the Persian yoke at one point, and that's where you have the creation of the 19th and 20th dynasties. And the last of these pharaoh was Nectanebo II, and he's going up against, I believe, Artaxerxes III. And Nectanebo is betrayed by one of his retainers, and that's how Egypt is finally defeated. And when that defeat happens, Artaxerxes is freaking ruthless to the Egyptians and completely destroys their the pharaoh dynasties, and there's a lot of stress on repressing the old Egyptian religion. And this is why Alexander is actually greeted by the Egyptians as a savior, because Alexander comes in and has gotten rid of this very oppressive regime. And Alexander uses this and creates a blend of Greek and Egyptian mythology to cement himself as the next pharaoh. And then once Alexander dies, Ptolemy I, who is his cousin, uses that same mythology to establish himself as the pharaoh, and even goes so far as getting the body of Alexander, which was being sent back to Macedonia to be buried alongside the Macedonian kings, and has it brought to Egypt, supposedly because Alexander had willed it to be, had in his will asked not to be buried with Philip, but to be buried with in Egypt at Siwa, in honor of his divine lineage as a son of Zusamun. But anyways, here we get the very brief mention of the first Ptolemy.
Ptolemy is a general of Alexander the Great.
It's possible that she was an Egyptian.
That is like I love this. Like, the one credible person that's like, yeah, she could have been an Egyptian, is like, I mean, no, not really. I feel like the big thing that these people miss is the only thing that survives as well as battle records is record of scandal. Like, literally, looking at another period, we have Justinian I and Theodora and Belisarius and Antonia, right? You have these key figures that are, the ruling class of the Eastern Roman Empire, and Belisarius is Justinian's prize general, despite the fact that Justinian will frequently screw Belisarius over. But Belisarius is constantly serving him. Now, we have two records of this from the same guy. We have an official history, which goes into the glorious military victories of the Renovati Imperii Romanorum, which was Justinian's efforts to try and reconquer the Western Roman Empire. And Belisarius is the commander that's going to do most of that. But then you also have a secret histories written by the exact same guy, which is effectively a smear book. And there are some historians that argue that it may have been written as a satire, as a joke, because it's so defamatory. It effectively paints Justinian in this very negative light of being this corrupted, greedy dude. His wife was a former prostitute. Belisarius was only marginally better, but he was ultimately a cuckold whose wife was constantly sleeping around on him, and he's just blind. He just refuses to see it. So it's like you the only thing that survives to the degree of detail that you have in written record of military victories are scandals. Sex and war, sex and violence. These two things are constants. So imagine, if you will, you have a royal family that has traced its lineage back to Alexander the Great, Alexander the Third of Macedon. They Ptolemy the First was his cousin. And so you have this line that has done everything in its power to maintain its purity. We're talking 3 centuries of inbreeding. And I'll pull up when the trailer finishes, I'll pull up the graphic that kind of showcases it, and it will probably turn your stomach a little bit because it is gross. Oh man, we've got people in the chat. I'm so sorry. We have 2 people watching. So we've got Ice Queen saying, hey all. Hello, Ice Queen. Thanks for joining us. We have Dave Brink from Genuine Comics saying, hello, Michael. Hello, chat. Thanks so much for coming out. The Empire has fallen. It's time to let go. I will never let go. I know Cleopatra from her depiction in the Asterix books. Apparently, she had a remarkable nose. She does actually have a interesting looking nose. Why isn't Michael working for the History Channel? Because the History Channel stopped caring about history 20 years ago. They invested all of their money in Ancient Aliens, and yeah. Anyways, so this is where this trailer just goes from dumb to straight up humorous.
Imagine her to have curly hair like me and a similar skin color.
I remember my
We have gotten to a point where we have documentaries where the evidence provided for this is, I imagine her as this with curly hair and skin complexion like mine. It's like, okay, that's nice. Where's your basis for this in historical fact? And the fact is that there is none. And then we get this line, which is both funny and bone-chilling. Because it's like, it's hilarious. Like you're actually using this in your marketing, but it's also things like, oh my God, you are trying to push this narrative as fact, and you're literally blatantly ignoring all of the evidence that there is against it.
grandmother saying to me, I don't care what they tell you in school, Cleopatra was black.
She has become.
She wasn't. We will get there.
An icon.
I am a god. Queen of kings.
Her story resonates with every woman.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't think that you could say, oh, this story of this pampered party girl who started a dynastic clash against her brother husband and slept her way up the Roman food chain to establish her legitimacy is anything that any woman would be like, yeah, you know what? I resonate with that. I get it. Oh, thank God it's fucking over. Okay. Ugh. That was gross. Almost as gross as what I'm about to show you. Let's take a look at the Ptolemy's family tree. As you can notice, there's a lot of bending lines that almost make this look like a circle. And that's because there's a lot of inbreeding. A lot of inbreeding. So what, so gross. So literally what we have here is, looking at this, because this is very confusing even for a family tree. Everybody has shacked up with their sisters except for Cleopatra the Seventh and Ptolemy the Fifth. Ptolemy the Fifth is with Cleopatra the First of Syria. However, this is the only... So if you were to argue that she had any sort of mixed heritage, it would come from Cleopatra the First of Syria over here. But that being said, she is the great granddaughter of she is the great granddaughter of Seleucus, another member of the Diadochi, Alexander's chief generals, who during the Diadochi Wars carved off the portion of Alexander's empire in Persia. She is the daughter of Antiochus III, also known as Antiochus the Great, or if you're a Jewish person like myself, the person the Maccabees revolted against that created the story of Hanukkah. So, so we've got some more people in the chat. We've got Felix Haas has joined us. Based, you are based at 9 Realms. Hail and bow to the chat and the panel. A lot of inbreeding. No wonder. So she actually has like a pretty standard. I'll pull up the iconic bust of Cleopatra that is housed in the museum, the History Museum in Berlin. Is from her period of time. So this is actually probably like a really accurate depiction of what she looked like. And also, I don't think that she was ugly. Like, it is a miracle that she wasn't like a Habsburg with the ginormous chin, like straight up, just absolute miracle. But she looks like a kind of typical Greek woman of the period. But yeah, so this is what 3 centuries of inbreeding looks like. Everybody is kind of shacking up with their sisters. The only exception is, and it's not even really exception, because initially Cleopatra is married to her brother Ptolemy the Sixth. I apologize, Ptolemy the 14th. But she, she has an affair with Julius Caesar that results in Ptolemy the 15th, also known as Caesarion. And then she marries Mark Antony, and they have Alexander Helios, also known as Ptolemy Philadelphus, and then Cleopatra Selene II, who does actually get married to another Ptolemy, Ptolemy of Mauritania, ruler of North Africa, and they have a child, Juba II of Numidia and Mauritania. So, that's literally the only real exceptions here. You've got 2 people on this family tree that slept with anybody outside of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and the people that they shacked up with were not of what you would consider today African descent. They are from Mediterranean stock. Cleopatra the First was Greek. Also, she came from a Macedonian line. And Mark Antony and Julius Caesar were certainly Italian. Roman. I hesitate to use Italian because everything got kind of messed up. modern Italian and classical Roman, while very similar, there are some differences that were brought upon by the Visigoth invasions that ended up happening, and that did shake things up a bit in the genetic pool anyway. But that's it. Like this is not something that you can go, oh well, she might have been black. It's like, no, because at the end of the day, we have no written record to suggest otherwise. And trust me, if there was some sort of affair in all of this craziness, it would have been written about. There would be some sort of surviving record. No one's going to be able to think of it from a today's standpoint. If you had a prominent family that has an affair, even if you try to get rid of every single shred, there is going to exist somewhere on some place, some hard drive, and rumor will spread, and you're never going to be able to erase it from the public consciousness. Think about like Princess Di, for instance. Like, we know that there was an affair going on there, but for a long time we didn't, and it was all speculation, and there's still speculation that she was murdered and it wasn't just an accident. You can't just erase that stuff. The two things that survive most palpably through history are wars and scandal. Sex and violence always sells. It always finds a way to stick around. So if there was any sort of inkling that an Egyptian mistress birthed one of the members of the royal family, we'd know. There'd be some sort of record of it, even if it was just a small piece of propaganda. And I mean, think of it like this. Augustus, his biggest weapon against Antony and Cleopatra was propaganda. If there was even an inkling of a chance that Cleopatra wasn't a pure descendant of the Ptolemaic dynasty, oh boy, he would have jumped on that. Propaganda and public outlook are what Augustus excelled at. He was not the greatest military commander. He was nothing like his uncle. That's what he had. That's why he surrounded himself with people like Marcus Agrippa, who were. But he understood the power of stories and narrative. If there was anybody who would have made sure that Cleopatra's unpure heritage, breaking the Ptolemaic chain to Alexander the Great, existed, it was him. And it would have been completely self-serving for him to do it, and he doesn't. Which tells me everything I need to know. It just didn't freaking happen. So there is this is the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt from 305 to 30 BCE, almost 300 years, all of it inbred. So let's take a look at what the result was in Cleopatra. So we're gonna stop this screen, and we're gonna present. Where did it go? There we go. So this is a replica of the bust that's in the museum in Berlin. But this is what Cleopatra more than likely looked like. This is the face that appears on most of the coinage and currency that we have from her contemporary period in Egypt. There are frescoes and paintings of Cleopatra that bear this same semblance. The fact that she wasn't a grotesque, hunchbacked Igor is impressive, to say the least, and the fact that she had more than 5 brain cells to rub together from as a result from the same is equally miraculous. And in a way, her existence is far more impressive her existence as a functioning person is far more impressive than anything she does. This whole this whole notion that we have about Cleopatra, I don't even know where it comes from, because like Augustus did everything he could to try and tear down this persona, her persona. And maybe that's why, is like this kind of romanticization of what she may have actually been like, and going against the narrative that's provided to us by Augustus. But for all intents and purposes, this is the woman that's responsible for the downfall of Egypt. Like, after her, Egypt is no longer Egypt. It is vassal state of the Roman Empire. We have a tree goblin in the chat. Hail, tree goblin. Thank you very much for joining us. You're catching us at the tail end of this. So it's like the big thing here is that she doesn't really do anything all too impressive. Throughout that god awful trailer, they're talking about how she's a queen of kings and unparalleled power. It's like, no, she was I don't want to say stupid. She was an insipid party girl who did not get along with her brother husband, that was forced out of her kingdom. Then the civil wars in Rome start up, and initially she's looking to side with Pompey, because literally anybody who's looking at the two men's pedigree, Pompey has the more significant military experience and victories under his belt. But she's initially looking to ally herself with Pompey, but her brother has Pompey killed when he gets to Egypt after his defeat at Pharsalus. His brother presents Pompey's head in a pickle jar to Julius Caesar as a gift, and it is not received well. But like, in terms of Cleopatra, so once Caesar gets to Egypt, it's not Caesar that needs Cleopatra for legitimacy, like the trailer says. In fact, if anything, I would say
you have reversed the concept.
But if anything, Cleopatra needed Julius Caesar to become the legitimate pharaoh of Egypt. She needed his legions. She needed his military. She needed his strategic mind. She needed him to help overthrow her brother. And that's what he does. And it's a grueling fight. And frankly, if Caesar hadn't been there, she would have been screwed. Even just him abstaining from the conflict, not choosing a side, she's not doing anything. So like, that's bullshit. Then you've got, the whole Mark Antony thing. Mark Antony is not using Cleopatra. If anything, Cleopatra is using Mark Antony to spread the influence of Egypt and make it a competitor with Rome. So what ends up happening, and this is important to note, after Octavian comes back to Rome, and Brutus and Cato and all of these people that were not Cato, Brutus and why am I blanking on his name? The conspirators to the assassination of Julius Caesar. Once all of those people are defeated at Philippi, the victors, who are Mark Antony, Marcus Lepidus, and Gaius Julius Caesar Octavian, come back to Rome, and they establish what's called the Second Triumvirate. Now, the first triumvirate was more of an unofficial thing. It was a backdoor room of influential people: Pompey, Caesar, Julius Caesar and Pompey and Crassus. And these people used their influence to unofficially sway things in the Republican Senate. The second triumvirate were actual positions, and effectively they did what Diocletian is going to do much later on, and they divvy up the empire into thirds. They divvy up Rome's provinces into thirds. Octavian gets Rome and the western provinces. Lepidus gets some of the central provinces, and Antony gets the eastern provinces, which are the most profitable of them. You've got Egypt, you've got Persia, you've got Judea, you've got all these places with stacks upon stacks of money and resources that, frankly, the West rely on quite heavily at this point, which is very funny. I wouldn't say funny, very ironic, considering the current situation being almost entirely inverted in modern day. But so these were the cream of the crop places. And on top of that, Antony is effectively the understudy of Julius Caesar. He was with Caesar during some of his finest moments, and was one of Caesar's top generals that Caesar trusted. So Cleopatra attaches herself to Antony. They become they get married, they have children, they create their own little dynasty, and their empire is the eastern provinces of Rome and Egypt. This is not an act of self-preservation. It's an act of foolhardy conquest, because Cleopatra completely misjudges the genius of one Gaius Julius Caesar Octavian. And when he comes for them, the Battle of Actium is one of the most anticlimactic battles in ancient history, because you would expect it to be a fight. And Octavian and Agrippa run them over like they are nothing. At midway through the battle, Antony and Cleopatra are both there, and their ship bolts halfway through the battle. They retreat. They don't even see the battle finish, and they abandon their armies and navies there to be slaughtered. There's practically nobody left to defend Egypt. And Mark Antony gets so desperate that he tries to challenge Octavian to a one-on-one duel per the traditions of their ancestors. And Octavian understandably goes, no, why the hell would I do that? Like, you're the dumbass that put yourself in this position. Like, I'm not, no. So, yeah, this has been my little impromptu when in Rome. I apologize that I've been kind of elsewhere for the past few weeks. I do really miss doing this show, and this next week I do have a special. We will have a special program. We'll be interviewing a descendant of a real life Roman emperor. It's going to be really exciting. I think that you guys are going to have a great time. That being said, we are at pretty much the hour mark, which is where I like to kind of have these things end. I hope that everybody has enjoyed me going off about Netflix's Cleopatra, because it is just straight garbage. Yeah, you guys have a great day.